feel a little stiff. Okay. Let's try this again. Let's just try it from the beginning, I think. Hello everybody and welcome to Nathan on Shuffle. I'm Nathan and I'm here to talk a little bit about vinyl records. I'm really excited to have a vinyl themed show. What basically inspired this is the record store day that's taking place today, July 17th. It's the second drop for 2021. And since I wasn't able to attend it, a record store is kind of farther away from me, and I tend to generally try to avoid lines and crowds and things, and not many of the releases were super interesting to me since I have such a niche interest in certain genres, and so I don't want to spend $30+ on a record that I'm lukewarm about. I try to really specifically pick up things that are in my total wheelhouse, and there are things I'm really excited to add to my collection. So nothing really appealed to me. There was one album that did appeal to me, and I actually did find a way to order it online to come later. They usually put up some of these record store day exclusives online later on in the day, so I picked up John Anderson's Elias of Sunhillow. Was really the one record that I really wanted from the group of record store day releases, so that should be coming to me sometime in the future. So really I'm excited about that. But in place of going to record store day and kind of being part of that excitement, I decided to do my own vinyl themed video here, and I'm actually following Neve the Prog Nerd. She did a vinyl tag video about a month ago, and I decided to follow suit. She kind of encouraged people to do their own vinyl tags with her prompts, so I decided to pick that up. It's been a little bit of time. I've been considering this for a little while. I did a vinyl tag video a few weeks ago, I believe, so I didn't want to do another one so soon after that one, even though Neve's kind of came out around that time. So I wanted to give some distance to that, and it's just I've been out of town and have been doing other things a little bit, so this was kind of my first opportunity, and I thought tying it in with Record Store Day was kind of a cool way to bring this out. So I think these are some interesting prompts, and I'm excited to get into it. Some of them were kind of puzzling, so I'm not sure my picks are exactly what was intended with the prompt, but I'll give my reasonings, and I think it'll just be a fun way to talk through some of my records. And I tried not to include records that I did in the last Vinyl Tag video, just to give a fresh set. And I tried also to do all unique artists, not doubling up on any artist. There may be one. Yeah, there's one double up of an artist, but beyond that, it's pretty much unique artists throughout. So I thought this would be fun to kind of just give you another rundown, kind of giving you a piece of my collection and my taste. So the first prompt says, an 80s prog record from a band that formed in the 80s. Now, right off the bat, this is a difficult one for me because I'm not really into 80s music generally. I don't know much 80s music. I'm trying to expand my tastes a bit and hope to get into more 80s music. So this is a tougher one, but I'm going with kind of the old standby that I think probably a lot of people would pick for this who are prog fans, and that's Marillion and their album Misplaced Childhood. This came out in the mid 80s, and Marillion, as I've talked about on my channel quite a bit in the last few weeks, has been a band that's kind of eluded me a bit. It's a band that I've struggled to kind of really fall in love with, but I do like a lot of their albums, and I like this one a lot. I think this is kind of one of their classics, and so I've picked this one up and have listened to it several times, and it's a cool package. I love the artwork. It's very colorful, and it's just really cool, and I've been told it's cool to open up and kind of check out the gatefold. I'm not quite sure how to do that in a great way yet, but there's the inside of the record. So just a lot of cool stuff with the packaging, and I just thought this was an important piece for a good prog vinyl collection. So that is my 80s prog record. All right, so the next prompt is an album by a three-piece band. And there's some notable three-piece bands in prog, certainly. I thought about Emerson, Lake and Palmer, of course, which I showed off one of their albums in the last vinyl tag, but I decided to go for kind of the other obvious choice, which is Rush and the album A Farewell to Kings, which I pretty recently picked up, actually. I'm trying to increase my Rush collection because it's a band that I'm getting into more now. It wasn't really a band that I was super into earlier. It's not one my dad really knew very well or shared with me. So it was one I had to discover on my own. But I'm really impressed with their playing and with these early 70s records, especially. This is a classic. And so definitely one that's worthy of putting here in this vinyl tag. And once again, a cool thing here with a cool gatefold. So definitely a cool album. Next we have a Canterbury Scene record, and this is one where I'm going to kind of have to take a 0, I think, because I'm not big into the Canterbury Scene. It's probably something I should explore more of, but as it stands, I don't really have a Canterbury Scene record. Kind of as a cheat, I did grab this from my collection, and this is on CD once again, so it's not even a vinyl, but this is the Tangent, and the Music That Died Alone. They're the first Tangent album from way back in the earlier 2000s. And I picked this out as a Canterbury record because it does have a track called the Canterbury Sequence that's inspired by Canterbury sound. So maybe not fully a Canterbury record, but the Tangent does have that influence. And I have all the Tangent albums on CD, a couple of them on vinyl. I have the latest ones, Proxy and Slow Rust. So really cool album and really cool track that kind of shows off that Canterbury sound. So that's the closest I can get to it. All right, next, an impulse buy record. This was hard to categorize as well. I don't really do much impulse buying. I'm pretty methodical about how I plan out what I get and what albums to pick up. But I did see a sale, I believe it must have been at the end of 2019 or something, and I saw a bunch of albums for a really cheap price that I thought, hey, even though these aren't really ones that are high on my list, I feel like I'd be a fool not to take up on this deal kind of thing. So kind of impulsive to just, buy a handful of records all at once that were not really on my radar, but I thought would be fun to try out and I heard good things about. And so the one that I picked out of my collection is this one, Devin Townsend's Empath, which people were raving about the year it came out. Devin Townsend is an artist that I struggle with a bit because he's more on the heavier end. He kind of runs the gamut. He's a very eclectic artist with a lot of different sounds, and this album really runs the gamut as well. Just has so much variety and different things on it. So this is the one album that I actually like from him. There's moments that are a little tough for me, the heavier, harder edged things and so forth, but I do appreciate the work of art that this is, and I think it's a really brilliant record, and I'm kind of glad I snatched it up, even though I didn't really know it at the time. It was just on a great deal, and I'd heard that it was a lot of people's favorite record of that year. So, and it's a beautiful package too, so I'm kind of happy about that. If you look at the inner gatefold, it's just really, really beautiful artwork. So, really kind of cool just as an art piece to have this one in the collection. So, yeah. Devin Townsend's Empath, kind of an impulsive choice for me at least, because it's not in my typical wheelhouse of prog, and I've struggled to really catch on to his other records. So now moving on, kind of this falls in that lane, but I'll pick another one, an album people wouldn't suspect that you own. And so since this channel is very prog centered, you'd expect my albums to be all prog or prog related, or at least classic rock at the very least. But this one isn't really in that style, and so this is a band I'm kind of really into that you may not expect. This is Punch Brothers and their album All Ashore. I really love the Punch Brothers. It's more of a bluegrass group, kind of has that bluegrass country style, has, mandolin, fiddle, those types of bluegrass instruments, banjo. But they do things in such a creative way. I really respect the band, and I really love Chris Thiele, who I think is kind of a prodigy on the mandolin. So to me, they kind of are a progressive band, but not progressive rock, like a progressive bluegrass band that takes in classical influences, maybe even a little bit of jazz at times. I think they're really a cool group that does things in such a unique way, and that's what I'm looking for with music. So that's where this record fits into my collection, but may not be one you expected. So if this is a band you may not know and you're somewhat interested in like that bluegrass style, check it out. It's pretty interesting stuff. I think they're pretty talented, and so I was just I pre-ordered this and picked it up because I like the band a lot, and I probably prefer some of the earlier records to this one, but this is a good one as well. So Punch Brothers, All Ashore, is my one you wouldn't suspect. All right, an album with great keyboard work. I believe there was maybe the same exact prompt in the other Vinyl Tag video. I believe I showed off Emerson, Lake and Palmer because of Keith Emerson and his keyboard wizardry. I decided to go in a more modern direction this time and showcase Dream Theater. This is Octavarium, and I just think Jordan Rudess, who plays keyboards for the band on this record, is just a maestro. He's a wizard at keyboards, and especially on the title track, there's so much great keyboard work and such a important element of the band that I thought it was worth showcasing. I really love this record, and I think it's a worthy one to have in the Dream Theater catalog. It's one of their best, more modern records. So definitely a cool packaging once again, and to kind of showcase some of the inner bits here. So there you have it. It's a cool record, and I think it's notable for a lot of great keyboards. All right, so the next one, an album by a non-prog band that made a proggy album. And so this is interesting. This is kind of something I'm always looking out for, because I appreciate when bands that you wouldn't expect release something in the prog realm. I think that's really interesting. And so this is kind of a cool prompt, in my opinion. And the one I grabbed, this is just now I picked up recently, so it was on my mind. This is The Crane Wife by the Decemberists. And I wouldn't really call the Decemberists a prog band per se, but they do have that kind of folk prog tendency in some of their records. This one and Hazards of Love, I'd say, are the two that are the most prog inspired of their catalog. Some of their newer ones kind of veer farther away from the prog, lane that they were in this time. But this is really fantastic, and it has the track Islands, which I've always thought was kind of a little mini prog epic by a not very prog band, and is a really cool one to check out. So I would recommend that one for sure. And so this is just a really great album and a really great band, and I just, if nothing else, would love to bring attention to the Decemberists and their work. So this is a really cool one. Hazards of Love, probably I like even more. That one is the one that got me into the group, but this is a fantastic one as well that has some progginess in it, even though I wouldn't call the Decemberists a prog band per se. And I don't think they would classify themselves that way. So there you go. All right, next we have the album that got you into progressive rock. Now, I feel like there was a similar prompt in the previous Vinyl Tag about this, and at that time I picked up Abbey Road by the Beatles, which I kind of argued was my entry point into prog, because even though probably not truly a prog record, it did have a more adventurous, side 2, especially with that long suite of songs, is kind of proggy in its construction, and the Beatles kind of flirted with little things that were more proggy, and the Beatles were really my first band that I truly fell in love with before I even knew what prog was, before my dad showed me all his prog records. This time I went with a slightly different tactic, and this may not technically be the record that got me into prog either, but around the time I was getting into prog from my dad, on one side, he was really into the prog stuff. On the other side, I had a best friend in high school who was really into classic rock and was, giving me make CDs of these like classic rock bands that he loved. And one that he showed me, I think even before my dad really went hard into showing me Gentle Giant and Yes and Genesis, was Pink Floyd. And he was really big into The Wall, but upon hearing The Wall and liking it, I kind of went backwards and listened to a lot of their other records that are more in that prog lane and so forth. So I feel like Pink Floyd really kind of was part of the entry into prog that I had, because as my dad was showing me, all of the records he loved by Yes and Genesis, I personally was picking up Pink Floyd records and liking it on my own, even though it's not a band my dad likes at all. So I picked out the classic one, Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, because this was one of the ones that really grabbed me of those albums that I picked up all the way back in high school, that kind of primed me to really love progressive rock, even though, this may not be full-blown prog as some of the other stuff is. I mean, some would consider this full-blown prog, certainly. But I feel like this kind of was a gateway album because it has touches of classic rock and psychedelic rock, and it kind of bridges that gap into prog rock. So I think this is a great gateway album, and I think it really was one that connected with me early when I wasn't really a full-blown prog fan yet, but I was getting there. And this is something that really had a lot to do with me crossing over into the realm of prog. So I thought this was a good choice for that prompt. All right, pick an album from a discography of 5 or less albums. So this is cool too. So I was trying to think of what band, and one that kind of jumped out pretty immediately to me, one of my favorite groups, is Flying Colours, which they really only have 3 studio albums to this point. They have a few live albums as well, so if you counted that might make a difference on how this prompt is. But really, I count studio records when you're talking about a band's discography. And so they have 3 studio records, this self-titled one, Second Nature, and then Third Degree. All excellent. I love all of them. I really love this artwork. I think it's kind of clever and interesting and artistic. This is their very first album, and I think it really set the stage and showed that they were a force to be reckoned with. They have, proggy influences, but also poppier influences, rock influences, and they meld it all into a cool stew that I thought was really cool at the time. Of course, Neil Morse is involved and Mike Portnoy, who are 2 touchstones of prog for me, but adding in Steve Morse and Dave LaRue, and then kind of capping that off with Casey McPherson on vocals to add kind of a different edge to the music, almost a indie rock, alternative rock vibe into the mix, just really added that special element that I think makes them reach new heights. So really love this record. It's perfect from front to back for me. And here's kind of the inside with some of the band members and so forth. So just a cool album that I wanted to showcase because one of my favorite groups. Of course, anything with Neil Morse is going to be one of my favorites, and this won't be the last time you'll hear about Neil Morse coming down the line here. So next prompt was an album that you have to crank the volume for, which I thought was kind of fun. The way I interpreted this is an album that's so rockin' that you just can't help but just turn the volume up and just bang your head to it, kind of thing. That's what I think of when I think of, cranked up music. This is heavy music that just deserves to be heard at full power and full capacity. And so what that brought to mind was Haken. And I grabbed The Mountain, which is my favorite Haken record. And to me, this is a band that personifies that. When I hear them, I want to turn it up and just totally rock out to what they're doing. I love Haken. They're premier modern progressive rock, progressive metal, as it were. And I just think this album is the pinnacle of what they've done so far and just shows so much creativity. There's the prog leanings, of course, with the Gentle Giant-esque Cockroach King and all of its inspirations, but there's also the heavy metal. Falling Back to Earth can get pretty heavy, and they have a cool dichotomy there of both sides of the spectrum. And so this is an excellent record that I highly, highly recommend. I got this one recently. I think I even featured it on probably my very first video for this channel. I got the reissue version from Inside Out for this year, so definitely one I had to have on vinyl because it's one of my favorite all-time records. So definitely a good one. Now on the opposite side of the spectrum, here's a chill out album is what the prompt says. And so what I thought of with chill out album was an album that's more lighter, that you put on kind of in the background when you want to mellow out. And so I tried to think of what album I have that's mellow like that, and I picked out I Am the Morning. This is Belighted, but all their albums would qualify because to me I Am the Morning kind of fits this bill, especially their first record and this one. Sometimes Lighthouse can kind of get a little bit darker, but I really like this record. It has a lot of classical influences. They're kind of almost a chamber pop duo, female vocals and a classical pianist, coming together and creating great music that's classical inspired, but also has kind of some atmospheric elements and is just beautiful. A lot of great piano playing, and to me that's really calming to hear just classical piano and just beautiful ethereal female vocals. They're a great duo. I believe they're from Russia. It's a great album, and I recommend it fully. I think it's really cool and really showcases a great band that's awesome at what they do. I love their vibe and everything about them. So I'm the Morning. Chill out to this. I like it. All right. Once again, kind of on the opposite end. This was a tough one too. Like, how do I interpret this? It's an album you play when you're angry. And so I don't really get angry very often. I mean, I guess I get frustrated at times, at least with myself because of my anxieties and things like that. But I don't know if that's really qualifies as angry. I don't really get angry at other people or angry at the world or just am in this bad, horrible mood or something like that. I tend to be a pretty upbeat person in general. Sometimes I get nervous or anxious, but that's not really angry. So for me, when I'm feeling I took it more as when I'm feeling kind of depressed or down, when I feel beaten down a little bit, I like to listen to an uplifting album. So I'm not sure this was the direction that was expected with this. Maybe it was intended to have a heavier record that you could just kind of let out your aggression with, but I don't have much aggression. So for me, when I'm feeling down or feeling, something like that, I put on something more uplifting and more positive. And so when I think about that, I think of Transatlantic, and I think of their album The Whirlwind, which to me is kind of the ultimate pickup album, and it kind of deals with the storms of life. You can view that as being angry, being disappointed, being discouraged. Those are kind of the storms described in The Whirlwind, and it has this epic message of you can pull out of that. There's a way out of the storm, and you can be uplifted and inspired even despite all the troubles and hardships in life. So to me, I like to listen to inspiring, positive albums that lift me out of my bad moods. And so that's kind of the tack I took with it. And this is one of my all-time favorite records. So putting on something like this just immediately washes away any anger and just makes me happy and excited. And so that's what I'm looking for in music. And that's what this record does for me. So it's a beautiful record. I love everything by Transatlantic, obviously. And, it's just a great piece of art that really is always magnificent and uplifting and powerful to me. So definitely one of the strongest records in my collection, in my estimation. So love this one, Transatlantic's The Whirlwind. All right, so now we move to an album you have more than one copy of. Now, I'm not sure the intention of this because I don't really buy multiple copies of albums. I don't know if it's kind of this where you buy, this new remastered version or this new deluxe edition, or, I don't tend to get caught up in that, maybe with certain artists, but especially on vinyl. I'm such a new collector of vinyl that I haven't really done that, and I don't anticipate doing that. I have bought a lot of albums, pretty much everything on vinyl that I had originally on CD, and I've bought on vinyl because I wanted it in both formats. So there's those records. But when it comes to vinyl, pure vinyls, and if I have any duplicates of vinyl, there's only one, and it's not because of that reason. It's because I bought it for myself and then shortly afterwards got it as a gift later. So I ended up with 2 copies of the exact same album, and I haven't, I probably should sell back one or do something with it, but or give it to someone maybe as a gift or something, try to introduce someone to prog, but I haven't yet. So I have 2 copies of Gentle Giant here, Power and the Glory. So 2 kings there, 2 powers and the glories. So that's my choice. Kind of an oddball choice, but I just thought that was funny to share that I have 2 copies of it. Not really because I want to, just I got one as a present later on after I'd already bought it for myself. So that's my album that I have more than one copy of. And so an instrumental album, this was hard too. I'm not an instrumental album guy. There's not many I have in my collection. In fact, there's only one I have on vinyl, so I had to pick this, even though I did mention this album, I believe, in my previous vinyl tag. So this is kind of a repeater, but it's Liquid Kitchen Experiment and their 3rd album. I picked this up on vinyl, of course, this year. It's a 2021 release. Love this album. really Liquid Tension is one of the rare exceptions where I do love their instrumental work, because there's so much going on, there's so much variety, so much adventure in the music, that it takes me on a journey and doesn't get repetitive or boring to me like some other instrumental albums tend to for me. So it's something I probably just need to get into a bit more. I haven't heard a lot of instrumental albums. It's just the few that I haven't really excited me very much. So I've been kind of hesitant to get into it more. But I do love this. I think this is one of the best records of this year. And I love all of the instrumental fireworks and all of the stuff on display. So this is a fantastic one and a great instrumental album. So Liquid Tension. All right, an album by a band you love that disappointed you. And this is a really tough prompt for me, because the bands I love really can do no wrong in my eyes. If I fall in love with a band, pretty much everything they release is going to be right in my lane, and it's going to be an album I love. So it's really hard to find something that disappointed me. There is some nuance of some bands where I like certain albums better than others, but generally I like all the albums. So very rarely am I disappointed by a band I love. So the one I pulled out was one where I had high hopes because of kind of the excitement around the release and because of how much I loved the previous release to this one. I thought this was going to be a slam dunk home run album, one of my new all-time favorites along that level, because of the length of the album, the hype of it, the band that I was just really excited about at the time. But it didn't really live up to those expectations totally. And that's this album, IQ's Resistance. I love Road of Bones. It's one of my all-time favorite records. It just really connected with me, even though I wasn't really a huge IQ fan even before that album came out. But it caused me to really get into them and then get excited for this new album coming out. And don't get me wrong, I think this is a great album, and I love all the tracks on it. So don't make it sound like I hate this album. I really like it. I was just really expecting it to be next level, better than Road of Bones, essentially, but I don't think it's better than Road of Bones for me. There's some tracks that I still struggle with. I listened through and it just a lot of it just kind of passed by me and didn't grab me, and I don't know why that is. But with subsequent listens, it has gotten better, and I have enjoyed it a lot more as it's gone on. So it's a grower, I guess. When I expected it to be an instant hit, and it just wasn't. When I first heard it, I was like, wait, that was it? It was a weird experience, because usually when I first hear an album by a band I love, I'm over the moon, ecstatic about it, and like really enjoying the experience. But this one just kind of passed by me. I'm like, I didn't really grab hold of anything. I just listened to. But, it just took some time. So it's a complex album with a lot going on in it. So, just my own taste. I know probably a lot of people watching this love this, so I don't want to offend anyone. And like I said, I do love it, and it's a cool package. It's a big, like, triple album, with a lot of stuff going on in it. So really great, and I'm glad I have it in my collection for sure. This is a must-have for me, but just didn't reach the heights of Road of Bones or even Frequency, which I really like. So there you have it, Resistance. An album that sounds better on CD. Now this is tough too. Because I'm not really a vinyl collector. I don't know if this is controversial or not, but I'm not really a vinyl collector for sonic quality. I'm not an audiophile. I don't really care about the nuances of what sounds better. Is this better on this format than that format? Vinyl to me is more about the feel, the having it in a physical thing that you can touch in your hands, and that has great artwork and is just really cool as a collector. That's why I collect vinyl. I don't really, and I think it sounds great. I'm not saying it doesn't sound good. I think it sounds really great, and I still probably need to upgrade my turntable. I have kind of an entry level turntable, so that could be part of why I'm not like blown away by the sonic quality of vinyl. But I really do love it, and I love the experience. It makes it so much more of a tactile experience to take a record and put it on the record player, listen to an album complete and full, without shuffling or breaking up songs or getting distracted and having it on a shuffle, even though that's kind of the name of my show. And I love listening to music on shuffle, on the go, and so forth. Sometimes it's nice to sit back and just listen to an album in full in a kind of a cool, warm, format like vinyl. So I like collecting for that. It's not really about the sonic quality. So when it comes to this, do I prefer the sound quality on the CD versus the vinyl? It's really, you know, both sound good to me. You know, I don't really split hairs about that. You know, I even think a really good quality digital stream is acceptable as well. So that may be controversial. I know some people are really into that. They're audiophiles. They really care about sound quality. And some people cite that as the number one reason why they collect vinyl, is because it's you know, sounds so great compared to CDs and so forth, has a warmth to it and has the certain tone that you just can't find on a CD or in a digital form. So this was a hard prompt for me because I don't really feel like I have an album that stands out as, oh, this is way better on CD, because to me all these albums sound great on vinyl and they sound great on CD. So it's hard to say which is better than the other for me because I'm not really digging into those nuances. But the one I grabbed, just because I wasn't too impressed with, maybe it's my copy or maybe it was just at the time it just didn't grab me, but I picked out Sons of Apollo, Psychotic Symphony. I was really looking forward to this record. Of course, I'm a huge Mike Portnoy super fan, so of course I had to grab this. And just the sound quality of the vinyl didn't really impress me. Maybe it's this pressing is just a little strange. So I thought it sounded better when I listened to it on the CD version or even the on the digital version that I had. So just sometimes some of the heavier, more metal albums can sound a bit distorted, and maybe it's my system. Maybe it's because, like I said, I have a little bit of a entry-level system that maybe doesn't play this kind of music as well. But this was the one that stood out to me as just not as great as some of the other records that I have that have sounded a lot better. So that's why I picked this one. Hard to say, does it objectively sound better on CD? I don't know, really. But, you know, I just took the prompt to kind of be which album's sound quality on vinyl kind of disappointed me, and that was this one for some reason. Just didn't sound great when I played it that first time. So the next prompt we have is a new prog rock discovery, which is kind of what my whole channel is about. You know, I've kind of talked to death all of my new discoveries in prog. You can check out all my album reviews and all of those shows, and also my New Music Fridays. I'm talking a lot about new bands and new music that's coming out. One, I believe I talked slightly about it on my very first show, but it's one, probably the standout new band of the year for me, at least to this point, and that's Mir. I really fell in love with Mir. I think this album in particular is really fantastic and overlooked a little bit this year. I've heard a lot of other people mention it. It's kind of catching on, I think, but it's a really fantastic record. Kind of blends a lot of cool different styles. It's not really purely just straight ahead classic prog. It has a little bit of a modern indie kind of flavor in certain aspects. It has a little bit of interesting instrumentation that kind of brings some even classical elements, but they have this kind of prog, you know, style as well that really comes through and shines. And they have, you know, a couple different vocalists, and it's a cool record that I think is worth checking out. If you like new adventurous prog music, I think this is one that could connect with you perhaps. So definitely one that's worthy of checking out that came out this year. So kind of a new discovery for me, and I'm excited to follow the band, see what they come up with next. So Mir, playing house. All right, so the next one, an album that you had to buy the deluxe edition for, and this, once again, I believe I showcased this, but it's the best example of this big box set of The Absolute Universe by Transatlantic. I had to get the Ultimate Edition, which has all the bells and whistles. It has both versions of the album, has the 5.1 Blu-ray. You know, I adore Transatlantic. They're my favorite group of all time, really. And so when I heard this was coming out, I had, even though it was really expensive and kind of over the top, I felt like I had to do it. So this was it. This is the album that I had to get the deluxe edition. I had to get it early so I could get it signed by Neil. You know, it's just a must-do. So this is one that I had to mention as a definite deluxe edition. This is a huge box set, and I'm not going to go through all the contents of it. But here it is. The Absolute Universe. Killer album. Definitely recommended. Great modern prog that came out earlier this year that'll feature high on my best of list for sure. So The Absolute Universe. All right, triple albums. So this is kind of fun, and it's kind of a and B prompt, because it's pick one studio and one live triple album. So I had to pick two here. And so for the studio album, triple album, I picked Flower Kings, Unfold the Future. This is a big, double album, of course, on 3 slabs of vinyl here on this package. And I had to have this when it was coming out. It was one of my early records that I actually picked up when I first, which is a prompt upcoming. But when I first got my turntable and was first getting into vinyl, it was one of the first new releases where I'm like, oh, I have to get this. And it's not a new album, but it was a new reissue, remix version that was coming out at the time. And this is a cool version with like this light blue colored vinyl. So I really appreciate this album. It's really excellent. I've been listening to lots of Flower Kings lately, and this one really stood out as a great record. So I thought it had to be mentioned. And so just a really cool, the gatefold there. So definitely a cool album, and a great triple album on vinyl. For the live album, I was going to pick Snow Live, but I remembered that I picked that last time. But I thought that was my only live vinyl. But then I remembered I have another one. So I was able to pick something a little bit different. This one, Merchants of Light by Big Big Train. Great live set by Big Big Train. All their live works are incredibly great. They're an incredible live band. I wish I could see them live, but I haven't been able to check them out. They haven't really come over my way, of course, in the States here. They were going to do some U.S. dates, but then, of course, the pandemic hit. But hopefully they'll do some next year, and so maybe that'll open up an opportunity. But it's tough because I live on the west coast of the U.S., and most dates end up on the east coast, and I just don't have the funds or the time to travel over there for concerts. But I always hold out a little bit of hope. Maybe there'll be some circumstance where I can go. But this is a great package. Merchants of Light. Like I've said before in previous shows, I believe that I'm not a huge live album guy. I prefer studio albums. I like live concert Blu-rays or DVDs because I like to be able to see the live performance. But if I'm just going to listen to an album, I prefer the studio versions almost every time. So that's why I don't have many live albums and don't really plan to get many live albums. But, some people prefer that, and that's cool for them. I'm really think it's cool because sometimes a live album is cool because it gives you an alternate version of the track where they do something a bit different with it, or it gives more of a live exciting feel to the music that people may be looking for. But usually I prefer studio tracks because to me that's really the pure way the band intended for that track to be heard. But Big Big Train is fantastic live, so I wouldn't blame anyone for preferring any of these versions over the album version. So Merchants of Light, Big Big Train. All right, we're getting closer to the end. This is going to be a long video, I can already tell. But it's really fun to be able to just talk about my music collection. So hopefully some of you have followed me all the way to this point in the video. So we'll try to get through these last few picks. The next album is an album with the best bass, and this was a little bit of a challenge. There's lots of great bass playing in prog, but it's hard to single out. There's one person, though, that I think of when I think of the best bass in prog, and that's Chris Squire, the benchmark to me of great bass playing, And so I wanted to pick a Yes album, and I thought this would be kind of funny to show off. I picked this up, I've heard, this is a picture disc, and I've heard mixed things about, picture discs don't sound as great on vinyl. And so I picked this up before I really knew that. And this was, it was on a deal, in a record store, and I thought it looked cool. And I think it's still cool to have for like the artwork, even if I don't play the disc because it's not the highest quality. But I like it as a piece of art. So if nothing else, it'd be cool to hang up or to put somewhere, so I'm not quite sure what to do with this, but I thought it'd be fun to show off Yes, going for the one. This is a classic album, of course, and a cool picture disc. And, of course, Chris Squire's bass playing on this, as all Yes albums that he's on, is incredible, He's the heart and soul of Yes, in my opinion, and I Really love his playing on all of the Yes albums. He's like such a signature staple of their sound, and I just thought it'd be cool to showcase this one because of the picture disc. So really, this album isn't any better bass wise than others, but I just thought it'd be cool to show since his bass playing's so awesome on all Yes albums. So here it is, going for the one. All right, so an album you have pre-ordered. I wasn't sure if this meant should I talk about albums that I currently have on pre-order, because I do have a few, or is it an album that I've gotten that I pre-ordered first, as opposed to just picking up in a record store or just buying as it was already released. So I kind of went with both. For the albums that I have on pre-order right now currently, I have Common Ground by Big Big Train on pre-order. Hope to get that by the end of this month. Would be cool. The release date is July 30th. I'm really excited for. I also have the Neil Morse Band record, Innocence in Danger, on pre-order. Really excited to receive that towards probably the end of August, I believe is the release date there. Of course, anything Neil Morse related, I have to pre-order and have in my collection. And I believe the other one I have the new Leprous album of Philion on pre-order as well. So those are the big three that I'm anticipating that I'm sure will get lots of coverage on the channel. The last album, though, that I pre-ordered that I've received is the Frost record, Day and Age, which I talked about already on the channel. I didn't have the vinyl at the point of that video where I reviewed the album. It came a bit later. I had to wait quite a bit of time to get the version that I pre-ordered. But it was well worth the wait. It's a great album. The packaging is great. Just has a lot of cool stuff going on inside. And also I got the light blue colored variants, which, why not? I'll show this one off because I think it's a cool, pretty color. So really nice packaging and colors there. So I thought this was really cool. Excited to listen to this even more because I got this fairly recently. I don't think I've even spun this yet on vinyl. So really excited to do that. So there it is, Day and Age by Frost. So there it is, Day and Age by Frost. All right, so next one. This is a cool prompt. The first album you ever bought. And I'm taking this to mean the first vinyl I ever bought, because if it's just album, I have to think back to my childhood days and like some of those early Beatles CDs that I got, the red and blue CDs that contain like all of their big hits. Those were probably the first ones I ever bought as a young kid. But since the vinyl resurgence, I bought a turntable in 2017. That was an exciting time for me. I was seeing a lot of things coming out on vinyl that I was like, this is really interesting. I like the idea of it and I wanted to try it out. So like I said, I got kind of an entry level turntable, which I'm still using. And I looked back in my history to kind of see what I bought around the time I got that turntable, and amongst the same purchase, so I assume this must be the first vinyl because I didn't really remember offhand. I bought this at the same time as I bought my turntable, and it was Neil Morse Testimony. So I had to have this. This was one of the first vinyl records I got. And as you know, I'm a Neil Morse obsessive fan. I love this album with all my heart. It's a fantastic record. And it was Neil Morse's first prog solo album after disbanding from Spock's Beard and leaving the band. But I remember it very clearly it was during my first year in college, I believe. And I had just gotten into prog. It was like my new obsession. I was just so obsessed with prog, and I was really obsessed with Spock's Beard in particular and everything to do with the band. And then I read that Neil Morse left the band, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just got into this new band that's my all-time favorite band, and they're breaking up. It was like a heart-crushing moment. I wasn't ever going to be able to see a new Spock's Beard record come out. I was stuck with the catalog I had at the time. I was never going to see them live, all of that stuff. I was just so heartbroken, disappointed. But luckily, both Spock's Beard and Neil Morse continued on in separate directions, and I've loved all their output since then. So, it was a little heartbreaking at the time, and I still would love to see the classic Spock's Beard lineup. I did see them perform the Snow Live concert at Morse Fest. I did take myself to see that because it was like, a must-do to see the classic Spocksbeard lineup on stage together. But of course, probably not quite the same as seeing them in their heyday, in those classic days. That would have been like a dream come true. I was made to feel a lot better once this album came out, and I was like, okay, Neil Morse isn't abandoning prog. He's still going to do very proggy records, and I'm still going to love his music. And at the same time, Feel Euphoria by Spocksbeard came out, which I really liked at the time too. So I'm like, okay, maybe it's a blessing in disguise that like now I'm going to get double the albums from Spocksbeard and Neil Morse separately. Of course, I prefer them being all together because Spocksbeard with Neil Morse in it is my favorite all-time band, I would say. But, the next best thing. So I really love Testimony. I thought it's just a very heartfelt album. Really explains Neil Morse's position on his faith and what he believes. And I think it's done in a really tasteful way. And I've always really loved this record. So definitely had to have it on vinyl. And it's one of the few Neil Morse solo records that are actually on vinyl. So it's definitely a must-have because of that. He still hasn't released, I don't believe there's ever been a vinyl version of One or Question Mark or Sola Scriptura or even Momentum, a Lifeline. All of those solo records, I would just immediately grab those if they came out on vinyl. I'm really hoping that one day they will, so that I could complete my Neil Morse collection on vinyl. So that was one of the early records that inspired me to want to get a turntable, really, because I saw, even Neil Morse is getting on board the vinyl train and releasing Testimony on vinyl. So this is a thing, and I have to be part of it because I just have to have everything Neil Morse. So kind of my early desires there. And then finally, an album by a band more people should know about. There's a lot. I have a lot of choices here. But I went with this one that I don't hear talked about nearly enough. I think this should be considered one of the best modern prog bands. And I just don't hear their name mentioned nearly enough. And that's Is. This is their latest album, Don't Panic. Really love this record. It's a really strong one by the band. It's fairly short. It does have an epic. It has 42, which is a long epic track. So it's not really super short. But compared to some of their earlier records, it just felt a bit on the shorter end, but I think that plays in its favor because it's very compact and packs a punch. Every song on it is really strong, and it's a great record from them. They have a lot of classic records. My favorite record of theirs, I unfortunately don't have on vinyl. I don't know if it's ever even been released on vinyl, and that's My River Flows. Really love that. It's one of my all-time favorite records. But it's a great U.S. Based band. I believe from like the New York area. They're still active, still making music. Hopefully they'll even release something new later this year or next year perhaps. I've seen them live even a few times, and they're really fantastic live, fronted by two brothers, Tom and John Galgano. Fantastic group, well worth checking out. They're an incredible band that I think doesn't get the love and attention they deserve. So here you go, Is. And with that, my marathon run through these albums is over. This is crazy. I've been talking a really long time. Not sure if anyone's going to watch up to this point. This is a long video. But I just thought it'd be fun to talk through records. And I had a blast doing this. So thanks to Neve, the prog nerd. Please subscribe to her channel. She's fantastic at what she's doing. I'm really impressed with how she's grown her channel and all the videos that she puts out. So definitely an inspiration for me. I'm very small potatoes compared to her and her following. So it's kind of silly to me for me to promote her channel when I'm, have such a smaller percentage of people watching me. But anyway, I still want to support all the other YouTubers who do similar things to me. So thank you guys so much for sticking with me if you're here still, and for all the support. And please subscribe if you like what I do here, if you want to hear more about all these vinyl purchases that I'm making and all of the records that I'm collecting, and if you want to join me on that journey. So, and all of my other prog stuff, is really fun to check out, I hope. So thank you guys once again. I'm really appreciative of the comments that I'm getting and all of the support by those people who I could tell really care about what I'm doing and who really have a passion for music. So thank you guys, and keep, as always, enjoying the music. Thank you so much. Bye.